Here's what's coming up on The World Today. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is meeting with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen concerning the last round of talks before a final exit. Number of COVID-19 cases globally rises beyond 67 million. Plus, the US Supreme Court rejects a challenge against President-elect Joe Biden's victory in Pennsylvania. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Teniola Shoboale. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is in Brussels today to hold talks with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in last-ditch efforts for a post-Brexit deal. Both will talk over dinner after negotiations between officials ended in deadlock. Major disagreements remain on fishing rights, business competition rules, and how a deal will be policed. The Prime Minister is expected to work through a list of the major sticking points with Mrs. von der Leyen. Sources say progress at a political level may allow the negotiations between Lord Frost and EU's Michel Barnier to resume over the coming days. Before his meeting with Ms. von der Leyen, the British Prime Minister told Parliament today that the EU must scrap demands he says are unacceptable if there is to be a Brexit deal to avoid a turbulent breakup in 3 weeks. He says Brussels wants the United Kingdom to comply with new EU laws in the future or be automatically punished, and is insisting it give up sovereign control over British fishing waters. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine may be the rave at the moment for prevention against the coronavirus, but the question now is, can you handle it? Here's why regulators are warning that people with significantly allergic reactions should not take the vaccine. It applies to those who have reacted to medicines, food, or vaccines. It mentions 2 people who had a short reaction after having the new jab. They have now been treated and are now fine. The reactions are said to be common with new vaccines. Reactions like TIS are common, but do happen with other vaccines, including the annual flu jab. It's the second day of mass vaccination against the coronavirus in Britain today as medics trained to handle the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine continue to inject people across the country. The mass vaccination poses one of the biggest logistical challenges in peacetime history, with the country a test case for the world as it contends with distributing a compound that must be stored as low as 80 degrees Celsius. At the Great Western Hospital in Swindon, west of London, medical director Charlotte Fawcett explained the vaccine has to be made up in the hour before use, meaning extra training for the staff.
Needles don't bother me at all, and I just felt a very, very slight prick, and that was it. Yeah, I've got no reaction now, I can't feel anything at the moment. So at the moment, no problem at all.
It has to be stored very cold, so it's stored at minus 80 degrees, so we've had to have a special freezer delivered here to the Great Western. And then, unlike quite a lot of vaccines, it then has to be made up on the day, sort of in the hour before it's administered. So that's required quite a lot of training for our nursing staff, because this is a new technique which we don't normally use.
I was a little bit nervous, to be honest. We've done an awful lot of training. We're experienced vaccinators. But anything for the first time is always a little bit intense. But overall, it went very well.
We'll have more stories on the coronavirus pandemic, but in the meantime, let's take a look at the U.S. presidential transition. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected a challenge against President-elect Joe Biden's victory in Pennsylvania. Republicans in the state wanted to overturn certification of the result, but justices rejected the request in a one-sentence ruling. It is a blow to President Donald Trump, who has previously suggested, without evidence, that the election result would be settled in the Supreme Court. Mr. Trump lost his bid for re-election last month. Since then, he and his supporters have launched dozens of lawsuits questioning the results. None have come close to overturning Mr. Biden's victory. Let's bring in our Washington correspondent now, Maria Bird. Maria, it's good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to us some more about the Supreme Court's decision over Joe Biden's win.
Well, it's very interesting. As you mentioned, President Trump has been saying since before months now that if Joe Biden was the elected president for the next 4 years, that he would end up going to the Supreme Court. And I think that has been his vow to America for many months now. And so we can now see that it has made it there. But again, they've rejected that. As you saw in the lower courts, when the election cases were brought forth by Trump administration or by Trump's lawyers, it was clear that they too were able to verify through recounting, through following through with the election practices, through looking to see if any of the actual ballots were falsified. And to be quite honest, many of what was found was on the Trump side, more so than the Joe Biden's end. And so it has now gotten to a place where it has reached the Supreme Court, and they are kind of that last final ruler. So it looks as if we are now, almost 40 days until Inauguration Day. But it looks as if we are pretty assured that our next president will be Joe Biden.
Yeah, it is at a dead end at the moment. Even before this, to the rest of the world, this was a clear win for Joe Biden. Why is the president and his campaign team disputing the results? And is there any chance at this moment that the results could be overturned in President Trump's favor? And, at this point, what other option does he have than to accept the results?
He doesn't have much of an option. I mean, he's trying to rely on Congress, which there are some very fine laws in there that Congress could enact some sort of a reversal and kind of review that. But we are very far removed from anything that Congress could do to reverse the actual election of President-elect Joe Biden. And so this is really about pride. I mean, this is about, it's very rare in U.S. history where a president has not served more than 2 terms. You have someone that went into office. I mean, if we all remember Donald Trump prior to being president, he's always relied on his fame. He's been very much one that wants to be on top. He doesn't like to lose. I mean, that is kind of who he is. And so I think he's just had a hard time and is not wanting to let it go. I mean, I think many people knew from the beginning he would never probably concede. He might leave the White House come January, but he would not concede the race. And so we're in a position now where Republicans who have supported him for some time are trying their best to continue to support him and to see if there's any hope. But at this time, the hope becomes smaller and smaller as the days go on.
Well, the Electoral College votes on Monday, even though Mr. Biden has won the most electoral votes. Is there any likelihood the Electoral College votes could go otherwise?
No, I mean, the Electoral College votes, the way they are designed is that pretty much, at one point it was you could have, like we see in some parts, there's only 2 states in the U.S. which still allow various regions to have their electoral vote go to one candidate, and potentially another region could have their electoral votes go to another. But at this time, the majority of the U.S. states are kind of by popular vote for that state. That's where their actual Electoral College vote ends up. And so we're not in a position where those could change. The votes have been certified. And so the election commissions have done their due diligence. And even as we've seen for those who have done recounts in their various states.
All right, then, Maria, a lot to keep our eyes on there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, earlier, Maria Bird did send in this report. Congress is expected to pass a coronavirus relief package without either the business liability protections that Republicans want or the aid to state and local governments that is a Democratic priority. The proposal has been rejected by the Senate Democratic leader.
While the U.S. has experienced its deadliest week for the coronavirus since April, with over 15,600 deaths, the U.S. government is on the verge of a shutdown if a government funding bill is not passed by Friday.
I anticipate that the Senate will take up a one-week extension this week so the government does not close on December the 11th, and work can continue through the end of next week.
House Democrats are stating that they want further negotiation talks with Republicans as the most diverse issue within the bill is concerning funding for President Trump's border wall with Mexico and detention facilities run by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Senate Democrats are simply asking the Republican leader to do one thing: sit down and negotiate.
As funding for the government is on the line, President-elect Biden makes a historic nomination with the first African-American nominee for Secretary of Defense, retired General Lloyd Austin. This comes with some controversy, as many progressive Democrats believed that Michelle Forney, former Defense Department Undersecretary for Policy, was the most qualified for the job. While the U.S. is in the midst of a pandemic and a historic transition of presidential power in less than 2 months, President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order to lower the priority of COVID-19 vaccination assistance by the U.S. to other nations. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
More on the COVID-19 pandemic now. More than 67.21 million people across the globe have contracted the coronavirus and more than 1.54 million people have died. That's according to the World Health Organization. In the United States, which still has the highest number of COVID-19 infections in the world, the number of cases has topped 15 million. Here's more on this and other development on our COVID-19 Global Update.
At the last count, the United States had over 15,089,000 cases of COVID-19. Still the country worst hit by the pandemic, with the world's most cases and deaths, making up more than 22% of the global caseload. Russia, over the past 24 hours, has recorded 26,097 cases, which is down from 28,142 a day earlier. The country's tally of COVID-19 cases has increased to over 2.5 million, including 44,159 deaths and over 1.9 million recoveries. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has thrown her weight behind a fuller lockdown in the country that would include closing shops after Christmas, telling legislators that vaccines alone would not majorly alter the pandemic's course in the first quarter. Europe's largest economy has been in partial lockdown for 6 weeks, with bars and restaurants closed, but shops and schools open. That has stopped the coronavirus exponential growth, but infection levels remain at a high level. Parisians are still skeptical about impending lockdown restrictions as COVID-19 infection numbers have been failing to clearly drop. The country will adapt its plans to relax some COVID-19 restrictions if it is needed to fight a virus that is resisting. France put in place its second national lockdown this year on October 30, but slightly eased restrictions by allowing the reopening of shops once deemed non-essential on November 28th in time for Christmas shopping. And finally, Brazil has signed a letter of intent with Pfizer, guaranteeing the delivery of more than 70 million COVID-19 vaccine doses from January next year.
Thanks for staying with us on the program. An Iranian parliamentary advisor, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, says some of the individuals involved in the assassination of Iran's top nuclear scientist have been arrested. Although unable to share details about the arrest, he says there is evidence proving Israeli involvement. Israel has neither confirmed nor denied responsibility. The Iranian authorities have put out conflicting accounts of how he was shot dead as he traveled in a convoy through the town of Abzard. On the day of the attack, the Defense Ministry said there was a gunfight between Fakhrizadeh's bodyguard and several gunmen. An Iranian report also cited witnesses as saying that 3 to 4 assailants had been killed. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, says the situation in Ethiopia is worrying and volatile as fighting in Tigray continues amid reports of ethnic profiling of Tigrayans, including in Addis Ababa. More than 45,000 Ethiopian refugees have crossed into Sudan, about half of whom are children, since conflict erupted at the start of November between federal troops and the TPLF. Thousands of people are also feared killed.
The situation in Ethiopia is, I think, it's really worrying and volatile, and as I had warned, it's spiraling out of control with appalling impact on civilians. In the Tigray region itself, fighting is reportedly continuing, in spite of government claims to the contrary. We have reports that particular areas surrounding towns like Mekele, Sherero, Aksum, Abi, Adi, and the borders between the Amhara and Tigray regions, fighting continues between federal forces and the TPLF and affiliated militias on both sides. Elsewhere in Ethiopia, there are numerous reports of ethnic profiling of Tigrayans, including in Addis. We have reports of dismissal from jobs, including in the civil service, harassment of Tigrayan journalists, and hate speech against Tigrayans. Well, I think that such discriminatory actions are deeply unjust, but are also fostering divisiveness and sowing the seeds for further instability.
Over in West Africa, main presidential challenger in Ghana's election, John Mahama, says he has not conceded defeat after letters circulated falsely claiming that he had done so. He says the letter, which bears the National Democratic Congress logo and is apparently authored by him, is a fake. The letter says the results so far do not give me any tangible pathway to the presidency and purports to congratulate his opponent, President Nana Akufo-Addo. Mahama has also alleged military high-handedness in Monday's election. While early results put the current president in the lead, full results have not yet been announced. Earlier, my colleague Layo Adegoke spoke to Joy News TV's correspondent Daniel Dadzie about exceeding the 24-hour deadline for announcement of the results.
Well, the last night at midnight, around midnight, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jean Mensah, addressed the nation, and she gave the results that the Electoral Commission had gathered as at midnight last night. She explained that the inability to meet the 24-hour deadline was because of some challenges they had with constituencies far to reach constituencies in the first place, and also because some of the constituency results had been challenged. We're all expecting to hear the results in a few hours. Of course, we here at Joy News have projected that in the presidential votes, at least President Akufo-Addo, who is the current president of the country, will win the election.
And now to the impact of climate change. Images captured by a British Royal Air Force aircraft and released on Tuesday show an enormous iceberg heading towards South Georgia Island in the southern Atlantic, where scientists say a collision could devastate wildlife, including penguins and seals. The RAF video showed the magnitude of the monstrous 4,200 square kilometer gigantic iceberg dubbed A68A. Its surface is carved with tunnels, cracks and fissures. A number of smaller ice chunks can be seen floating nearby. British officials said in a statement that the sheer size of the 148-kilometre-long A68A iceberg made it impossible to capture its entirety in one single shot. Scientists have spent weeks watching this climate-related event unfold as the iceberg, about the same size as the island itself, has advanced over 2 years since breaking off from the Antarctic Peninsula in July of 2017. Now, being cooked up indoors is not something Muscovites are looking forward to this Christmas season. Many would want to go out to celebrate with friends and family. But how can you, with the coronavirus pandemic still hovering above many populations? Well, maybe one restaurant could provide the answer. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel has created private glass pods overlooking Kremlin, hoping to provide some comfort this season. The pavilions are heated and can host up to 16 people, which could be members of one family or a group of friends or colleagues who prefer not to mix up with other visitors. Each glass dome can be pre-booked with a deposit starting from $340 and is decorated to resemble a mountain chalet for those missing travel and skiing holidays. And finally, more than 30 light sculptures were brought to life in Estonia's capital on Saturday, a festival display made up of several million lights and thousands of meters of silk, according to the organizers. An illuminated Christmas tree and light sculptures ranging from polar bears to the Taj Mahal greeted visitors at the Dreamland Festival of Light in Tallinn. This appeared to appeal to visitors, several of whom said they had not expected the festival to be so large and that it was a good alternative to the usual festivities at Christmas time, which have been scaled down due to the coronavirus pandemic.
I am actually impressed because I thought it was going to be smaller, but it's actually quite big, so I'm quite impressed. And I think it's, given the situation that we have in Estonia and also in other countries of the world, I think it's a very nice idea to have something like this outside in the open air. I am worried about the situation that we have here in Estonia and globally, but I'm also hopeful that it will end soon. So I think it's important to be positive.
Well, it's. I didn't actually expect to see so many people here, but well, it's nice. It's nice that we have something like this at the time we have that is outside.
Shows you there's still light and hope amid the pandemic. Thank you so much for watching The World Today. I'm Teniola Shuboale. Stay safe.